Welcome to the Enterprise Excellence Podcast, where our purpose is to help create a better future. Learn from our world's experts how to improve your organisation sustainably. Learn how to achieve and sustain an excellence journey for yourself, others, and the planet.
And I'm your host, Brad Jevons, coming to you from Brisbane, Australia. We are proudly brought to you in association with SA Partners, a world-leading business transformation consultancy. SA Partners are a truly purposeful company focused on helping organisations achieve sustainable improvement for themselves, others, and the planet.
Welcome to episode 64 of the Enterprise Excellence Podcast, the second of a two-part series with Dr. Morgan Jones. Morgan will be continuing the chat today on his new book, Why Bother? Why and how to assess your continuous improvement culture. What an important book. If you haven't already, I recommend listening to part 1 of this series, episode 63, before you go into this one. In the last episode, we covered KPIs and KPIs, why it's essential to measure behavioural rather than purely performance indicators. What does an assessment look like, because it can vary depending on where the organisation is operating, and how to calibrate an assessment. Today we deep dive into calibrating an assessment and the language that assessors can use to encourage interview responses.
Morgan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Brad, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about it.
Morgan, you mentioned KPIs before that. You know, in your fifth chapter, or your fifth element of the book, you're really breaking it down to not KPIs, which are key performance indicators, but down to KBIs, key behavioural indicators. What is the difference, and what are some examples of key behavioural indicators?
KPIs are really interesting. So the KPIs usually exist for a whole year, could be a couple of years, might be ongoing. If you're in mining, it might be volume of coal, or it could be cost to provide a service, or whatever. And so that's a KPI. It's usually an outcome. Now, a KPI may be something, well, what we want to focus on is customer experience. And if you think of in call centers, one of the classic examples is we use as a KPI is average handling time, AHA. Most widely used KPI going. So what that drives is a behavior, because people know that if they have a lower average handling time, they get rewarded. So if you've got the low handling time, so you get your customer off quick, and then they have to ring back. Because what you should be saying, how do I resolve the customer's inquiry first time? So the call might take twice as long, but rather than, if I ring twice, if I'm going to ring Brad twice, he might have a really low AHA, but I've had to ring him at least twice to solve my problem. Yeah. Whereas if Brad could solve my problem first time, that is the true value of being customer focused. So the KPI would be slightly different. Is it may not be time to finish call. And it can be challenging the KPI to say, well, how long did it take to answer and solve the customer's problem?
Yeah.
And in the banking world, in Australia, we have remote communities. Whereas in most retail banks, it's very quick. We want to get you on the phone, solve your problem, sign you up to a bank account, and get you out again. Yeah. But in remote communities, they may only have one phone. So the average handling time, the phone call may be 3 hours, because everybody will swap and they all have turns at making a phone call. So the average handling time is absolutely the wrong thing to do to measure. What we're measuring is, did we sign up the customer? Do we meet their needs? Did we solve their problem? So it's actually looking at the behaviors and getting people to say, we want to be customer focused, not about cost. This is about, did you solve the customer or client's issue first time? Did they get what they needed? And then you say, how can I do it more efficiently? But it's sometimes about building loyalty and relationships. So that's a classic KPI. And that the ones often you have in CI world is about savings, cost savings. How much have you saved per month? How many projects have you implemented and saved? Right. It might be how many small ideas have you got running right now? How quickly can you complete them? Rather than actually, how many of the team completed within their own sphere of control? And are they managing them? So instead of taking 6 to 8 weeks to complete a project. They may do smaller ones, but they own them and they implement, and are the results delivered? More importantly, are the teams feeling a difference from the improvement? So that's the thing they really want to say is, that the KPI is, has the improvement changed the experience for the employee? Rather than how quickly did you solve the problem? Because it usually quite often is a fixing a symptom, but the experience hasn't changed. Yeah.
It sounds from the conversation, it's really, ultimately anything we measure needs to be strongly focused on the customer and the voice of that internal customer and external customer. But it's even more powerful we can get down to the behavioral measure that I guess is something that employee can control themselves and do themselves, and you can see it. It's really, really good. Morgan, what does an assessment look like if you're taking this journey and you're building your behavioral and operating system as an organization, and you're really thinking about it, and you're developing your way, and you're then going to measure and track the journey and help to coach, plan, do, check, act through a journey. What does an assessment look like, and what do you write about in the book in relation to an assessment?
Well, actually taking through the process. So first of all, it depends on where wherever you're assessing where they are on their journey. If they're just starting out, it's just a baseline. So there's not criticizing, it's no right or wrong. One of the classic examples in a lot of assessment systems, they give an absolute number. You've got a score out of 100 or a percentile, which can drive the wrong behavior. So one of the things we implemented at CVA, we have 4 categories. We have bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. So what it is, and say, look, we expect you for the next 2 years to be at bronze. You're just still learning. We didn't tell you that, you had 50, 51 or 57, but because some people, large organizations, will focus very much on the KPI of the number, again, which can drive the wrong behavior, and say, are you continuing to improve? We can give you, have they improved? So we just don't give them the hard number. It's used to calculate where they sit. And Shingo do the same. So they have scores that actually give different varying levels of award. But that's the other thing, is actually deciding what are graduations. Toyota had their 3 pillar system. So again, how do you know? And you had a target to continue to improve. So where you are in the organization, where they're starting off, and it could take a couple of days to a week to do an assessment. So you plan what you like to observe. You interview people at various levels. You want it mostly important to understand what's happening at the front line, talking to the people who actually do the work, and at various levels. And you look at breadth and depth of the organization. But you also want to observe, because people will tell you what they want to hear. So what you need to say is, I want to observe a team meeting. So an example, a supervisor may say, yes, I empower my team to come up with ideas. Okay, great. I've heard that. First of all, you ask the front line, do you feel empowered? Does your supervisor encourage you to come up with your team meeting, encourage you to come up with ideas? And you say, no. Okay. So people will tell you. So one of the things is having triangulation and getting multiple sources of data. And then you've got to observe team meetings. Does the team leader or supervisor actually encourage people with ideas? Or they just skirt off, anybody ideas and move on? Or do they say, oh, come on, we must have something? So that's what encouraging and not letting the team just quickly whiz off onto other things. So we actually look for multiple sources. You look at, so you have pre-read. So you look at their employee engagement surveys. You look at what their results are. What are the projects that are delivering in the last, both continuous improvements? You need to see some results. Show me. You continue to improve. What have you done? What's changed? What's your strategy? What have you planned to do this year? And what have you actually delivered so far? What did you plan last year? So actually showing, rather than just putting plans together, do you actually follow through? So one of the elements is, first of all, you need to do direct observations and interviews. You do direct observations of team meetings. And sometimes, especially in the virtual world, you may video those. You look for other evidence. You look for the results and you quiz them. You say, well, okay, we looked in your results here or the CPS or whatever. Help me understand what's that look like. So you look, and then when they say, oh yes, and we have a great work environment, you go outside and there's rubbish on the floor and it's dirty and bulbs are gone, or is it real, clean? So you go, well, you hear what people say, but let me go and experience. So you go Gemba or go see with purpose and say, what I'm looking for is what I've heard in conversations and observed, is this real?
What a great episode. It is hard to believe that we are already heading into December, the last month of the year. We'll be taking a break from Christmas Day until the 10th of January 2022. We hope that you and your family and friends have a wonderful Christmas, and we welcome you back in the new year. There are some absolutely cracking episodes that you can go back and listen to on the break. Feel free to email me your favourite, and we can have a chat about the best ones of the season. Remember that you can go to enterpriseexcellencepodcast.com/downloads to get hold of many resources that we and our guests have provided. It is becoming a useful library of tools and resources to help companies on an enterprise excellence journey. Please like, subscribe and share this podcast to help others gain insights and create a better future.
Yeah, I can really see it, Sat. Like you mentioned, that triangulation approach where you're looking to take it from the leader, the front line, from their measures and performance there, and then even at the front line and observing meetings or observing work areas. Like you'd really get a powerful outcome doing that type of assessment, wouldn't you? You're seeing it from all angles and you can really correlate it together.
Yeah, and then you look for common things. So we talk about recommendations. What's that actually look like? So you calibrate and sort of say, well, look, we've all seen these sort of things. Well, you can give it a big laundry list. We go, but which are the ones that can make the biggest difference and help you the next step? If you focus on these 2 or 3 things in each area, whether it's about physically doing stuff or connecting with the customer and Hoshin Canary type thing, or continuous improvement, you break it down and go, well, there's some things you're doing really well. And that's the other element. It's getting people to focus on and keep doing what they're doing well. Rather than just always focus, yeah, but okay, great, we did okay, but let's focus always on the stuff we need to fix. Keep doing what you're doing well and actually make sure you understand what you're doing well and why it's working. Yeah. That's sometimes what people miss.
Yeah, I can imagine. Morgan, when you look at an organization wide, developing an excellence journey like this, how many behaviors do you typically see that they're focused on at one time at a leadership, middle management and frontline team?
Well, that's a really good question. Sort of some organizations have 10, some have gone up to 15. They've taken the Shingo model, principles, and they made it more complicated. Other organizations have taken it down to 5. So 4+1, we just took it into there. There was actually 5 behaviors underlying all of that. What does that actually look like? What is continuous improvement? So we just broke it down and we have a behavioral framework just specifically on that.
Yeah, wow.
All aspects. So you go, oh, okay, because you got people who like to experience, have different ways of learning, and don't realize sometimes how they behave, that the intent is correct. They want to do the right thing, but how they come across can be not quite what they were hoping for to drive along behaviors.
Yeah, wow. So really it's about creating an organization's own way. And, like you said, it could be 5, it could be 10, it could be 15, but I guess it's their way. But the assessment approach, whether you're talking 5 or 10, it's not a crazy amount of behaviors you're looking for and you're trying to improve all the time, is it? It's quite a focus.
One of the interesting things, we can talk about Kevin Iyer in the book, helping us out. The example I use with most people explaining this. It comes around when you say, if I said to you, Brad, why did you do that? That word why sends your amygdala into hijack. It takes you back to childhood. What have I done wrong? And you send you back. Even you might physically you might show that, but it's what's happening neurologically. Yeah. Now, if I turn around and said, change the question and said, Brad, what did you consider when you made that decision? I'm actually taking the neuroscience of how to do it. So this is really, really important. So audits and stuff, people feel defensive and give you the wrong answer. You can't give me the wrong answer. So it's that subtle piece of how you ask the question can elicit such different responses. And you can, so I quite often, then Shingo says something else. It's around people say, oh yeah, it was just a great chat. Because they don't realize it's a conversation. I'm extracting out a lot of listening lots of information on how they behave, what they perceive, why they do certain things. And it's not manipulative, but it's just making it a safe environment for people to talk, not only what they do, but why we do it.
I can see in a book on measuring and assessing and reviewing and tracking your excellence journey, how language, why you've brought that in there. Your language would be such a key aspect. Well, you mentioned in the book also the element of how to calibrate, and then also a roadmap. Do you mind just explaining that reason for calibration? You could just go out by yourself and just do an assessment. Why is calibration important, and what's that look like?
Well, it's an interesting one. So, as an expert, I might go out and assess. And I have my own personal biases. I'll see some things that'll be my hot buttons. And even though I'm a professional, I will see some stuff and I'll miss some stuff. Because so if I go out my own, you can miss really important things or misinterpret stuff. Whereas if you work in pairs, so quite often we recommend you do it in pairs, because you have two people and go, oh, I heard this. Oh, did you? I missed that one. So you're you're taking so much information in. There's stuff you can miss. Whereas between two of you, you tend to sort of pick it up. Pick up stuff and say, oh, that's not what I was doing, but I heard this. And you go, yes. So sometimes you'll have a selective memory, and so you might write notes. And that's the other part we talk about calibrating, writing notes, what people said and what was happening at that point in time. If I was observing something and I go, this is what I saw, and that's not what I saw this. And you might have been looking totally different part of the room. And I go, oh, okay. And it's about, okay, so we're getting different behaviors. So some of the things we can talk about then in calibrating, instead of being a consistent behavior, you got a lot of variation in behavior. So one of the recommendations is get some clarity and consistency, what behaviors you really want.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why the importance of calibrating, because some organizations use them as key maturity as measures for senior leaders. So you need a robust process that can stand up to scrutiny, because some leaders don't like their scores, they don't like their results, and you have to say, oh no. And here is, rather than just being Brad's opinion or Morgan's opinion, here's the evidence. We have some structure, and it doesn't matter who takes the assessment. You get a consistent approach. So that's why this is an element to it. It relies partly on the expertise of the assessor to assess the behaviours, but the framework will give you a consistent outcome. So just some less experience take longer than experience. So that's probably the reason between the calibrating and sort of aligning behaviours and of the assessors.
Yeah, I can see that's a good approach, where you've got two different eyes, two different ears, 4 different ears listening in and observing, and then calibrating between each other to give that rigor to the results. Yeah. Morgan, the book, so with Why Bother, you've really got this good structure that people can read and learn from on how to engage sponsors at the top, how to define behaviours, and really get down to what are those behaviours that we need at the different levels of the organisation, how to look at our systems and our operating systems that either impact positively or negatively, and what do we need to do there, how to assess, breaking things down to KPIs and really being able to measure it, the key behavioural indicators, the use of language, tips and tricks on virtual, and then also how to calibrate and how to actually use that calibration technique in your assessing to really get that stronger results and more rigor to the whole system. Morgan, with it, I can see that a lot of organisations who are trying to take an excellence journey can gain a lot from this and grow from it. How can, Morgan, people reach out to you if they want to learn more, and how can they get hold of the book?
Well, that's great. The book is on pre-order, so it's due out in September, I think September 24th.
Nice.
2021. So you can pre-order it. So the book, I'm available on LinkedIn. So is the other co-authors. So Peter Hines is a professor, Shine, and Chris Butterworth. All three happen to have won Shingle Awards for the publications and stuff. So so you can actually reach out there. It's easy to buy the book. You can buy it hardback, softback, or sort of ebook. So you can actually, it's quite easy to get hold of. So you pre-order it, So you'll be one of the first to get it. And then if you get any questions, it's designed that gives you, it's like driving a car. I can give you a book on how to drive. And there's lots of stuff in there, but in the end, you just need to have a go. And sometimes, when you're learning to drive, you need to drive an instructor to help you. It could be dad, it could be a formal driving instructor, and it could be, let's have a go. And you might ask for some expertise and people. There's lots of people who can help. I can help in taking you on that journey.
Yeah.
But eventually, you just have to have a go.
Yeah.
It's about doing. You can't, you can only do so much by reading a book to learn to drive.
Yeah. Now, Morgan, I'll definitely be getting a copy and pre-ordering. And thank you so much, mate. And also Chris and Butterworth and Peter Hines for sharing knowledge and expertise in a book like this that will really help us understand how to truly lead a journey of enterprise excellence. And I appreciate everything you do to help us create a better future.
Yeah, thank you. There's one last thing I'd like to leave with is around all the proceeds from the authors go to a charity in Australia, which is called the Black Dog Institute, which supports mental health.
Yeah,
it's like separate mechanisms for people who are struggling in work and everything else. So it's an opportunity to make a better world by not only providing knowledge and structure to help organizations do operational excellence, but also makes a difference to people via the Black Dog Institute from mental health.
That's awesome, Morgan. Yeah, many symbiotic win-wins there. Help your organization and help a great cause at the same time. Morgan, thank you so much again. I really appreciate your knowledge and time, and thank you for creating such a wonderful book to help us all.
Thank you.
Cheers, Morgan. Bye for now.
There was one major takeaway for me from this episode. An assessment program can gather evidence of improvements and keep the momentum going on an excellence journey. I know that a lot of companies go into a lean or continuous improvement, agile or Six Sigma journey, and I think that the stats are not good with how many fail or don't progress or drift back. Last I heard, it was around 70% failure rate. 70% of change journeys that don't go forward. That's enormous. What is the reason for that? Why do some companies spike up initially and get gains in a change journey and then fall back again? According to Dr. Morgan Jones and his co-authors Chris Butterworth and Dr. Peter Hines, it comes down to an assessment program that can gather evidence about the improvements and overall growth of the journey. An assessment program can show that your efforts make a difference and are starting to embed rather than just waiting on the sidelines. An assessment program that monitors progress to ensure that you're continuously moving forward is a very powerful tool. Because sometimes when you're in the minutiae, the whirlwind of the day job, this can be lost. When you step back, review, and then adapt as a team, it can really help you keep the journey progressing rather than drifting back. Morgan, thank you so much again. I really appreciate your knowledge and time. Thank you so much for helping us create a better future. Bye for now.